All right, so this video is to help you understand the conventions lesson about recognizing fragments and then using that knowledge to help you better understand how to use semicolons and colons. So I realized a long time ago that if my goal was to get you better at colons and semicolons, then we had to structurally start at a place where you recognize the difference between a fragment and an independent clause. So let's begin with Unit 14 or Rule 14 in the Pocket Style Manual. So I'm going to take you through the unit itself. I want you to read the whole thing, and then at the end of that you're going to take this learning curve adaptive quiz. All right, so let's begin. I'll try browsing resources for this unit. Here we go. All right, so the first thing that you probably need to do is read this paragraph, and you can do this either on the screen with me, or if you want to use your own Pocket Style Manual, then we are in Rule 14. And maybe if you want to follow along on the screen, but take notes then in your paper copy, because you are not going to have access to this forever, but you will have access to your paper copy forever. So think about that if you would like to. So I'm going to just have you pause the video for a moment so that you can read this paragraph on your own. Okay, hopefully you've had enough time to read these few words here quick at the beginning. So I just want to highlight some important things from the beginning of this rule. So we don't treat portions of a sentence as if it were a sentence. And when they mean treat it like a sentence, it means that you're putting a period at the end of it, right? Starting it with a capital letter, putting a period towards the end of it. If you're doing that, then you are treating that sentence as a fragment. In order for something to be considered a complete thought, it has to be a full independent clause. And remember, this word clause is going to be really important to us in order to understand grammar better. So they define what a clause is in the next sentence. A clause is a group of words that has both a subject and a verb, and also that group of words can stand alone as a sentence. So you've identified a noun that is going to be the subject of your sentence and a verb that is going to function as the main action, and there's no other language surrounding it that makes it unable to stand by itself. Fragments cannot stand by themselves, and we're going to talk about a couple different types of fragments, including fragmented clauses and fragmented phrases. And we're also going to talk about how sometimes it's okay to write a fragment, but I just want to make sure you understand why. So not only do you need to recognize fragments, but you need to realize that you can repair them. And so there's two different ways that you could repair them, and we're going to talk about that as we go through the examples. Either you're going to pull that fragment into a nearby sentence, which is often easy to do. One thing that I hate when students rewrite their work and I point out a fragment, sometimes they'll just cross out the whole thing. And I often get upset with them because you don't want your idea to be gone. You wrote those words for a reason. I just want to make sure they're punctuated correctly. And one of the best things to do is to just look at the sentence ahead of the fragment, look at the sentence after the fragment. Should it be attached either before or after? Sometimes it's just a matter of learning how to use a comma correctly and know where the sentence should be ending rather than where you did previously put the period. That's all. If that doesn't work for you, then you can rewrite the fragment, which would involve changing some language and word choice and grammar. But sometimes it's just as easy as pulling it in and changing capitalization and punctuation. Okay, we're going to talk about fragmented clauses first. Fragmented clauses are groups of words that are patterned like a sentence because it has both a subject and a verb. Right? It has the subject and a verb, therefore it is a clause, but it is a type of clause that cannot stand alone. And the reason why it cannot stand alone is because it's got one of these subordinating conjunctions at the beginning of it. This is just a small list of subordinating conjunctions, ones that are often very popular with students. Please do click on this link or go to page 309 in your textbook in order to see a bigger list of subordinating conjunctions. So if you're in your paper copy of your book, you're looking at subordinating conjunction. So most of the time, fragmented clauses can be very easily pulled into the sentences around them. So we have this example here. Right now, they're treating this as an independent clause, which it is. We fear the Zika virus. Sadly, we could change that now to we fear the coronavirus. And then this one doesn't make sense by itself. Because it is transmitted by the common mosquito. Because it is transmitted by the common mosquito. If you say it out loud, it doesn't sound right. It sounds unfinished. And that's because our ear recognizes that this word because, it makes us expect that this clause is going to be attached to something. And right now it's not. Right now, the way it's originally punctuated with the period here and the capitalized letter there, it's just sort of standing off by itself. But it can't. However, it can be connected to this sentence, and now you've got one fluid, nice compound sentence. We fear the Zika virus because it is transmitted by the common mosquito. Sometimes, though, you cannot take fragmented clauses and pull them into nearby sentences, and if that happens, then you just want to rewrite the sentence. So here we've got the first independent clause, that's fine. But if we start reading from here in the original sample, it doesn't sound right. I want you to read things out loud sometimes to see if they make sense. So that in many parts of the world, fragile ecosystems are collapsing. That doesn't sound right, okay? So we have to change it. Basically, the problem is that this phrase, so that, is actually one of these subordinating conjunction phrases. So if you wanted to look on 309, you'd be able to find it. So really, all we need is this word right here. In many parts of the world, fragile ecosystems are collapsing. That is a complete thought. So sometimes it's just about rewriting the sentence, which either means delete words or add words to restructure the sentence. Let me see if I can move myself down here, maybe. There we go. And we'll go to the next part of the lesson. Next. This is what we've already done. There we go, fragmented phrases. Phrases can also come in the form of, fragments can also come in the form of phrases. Basically, phrases are groups of words that do not have both a subject and a verb, therefore they cannot be considered a clause. But sometimes they're still mistaken for sentences because a lot of times they'll have a subject because they're a noun phrase, or they'll have a verb because they're a verb phrase, but they don't have both components, so then sometimes it just freaks people out. Again, I'm just going to tell you that if you read things out loud, you're going to hear that it's wrong. In this case, examining and labeling hundreds of pottery shards. Well, that doesn't make sense, but we can take a look at this one and see that, well, what we don't know is who's doing the examining and labeling. It's the archaeologist. So basically, this is a verb phrase that's giving more specific description of how the archaeologists were working. So the archaeologists work slowly, examining and labeling hundreds of pottery shards. Okay. This is another one that is an appositive phrase. So this time, basically an appositive phrase is like a definition that follows a noun. So in this case, a fear of the outside world is not a complete sentence, but it is the definition of agoraphobia. So if we just learn to attach that appositive to the sentence ahead of it, then we're fine. In this example, this is a list. Lists are never sentences. And note that we're going to use a colon here to help our problem. So this is another reason why colons can become useful and why I put fragments and colons and semicolons together. Once again, if you can't pull that fragmented phrase into a nearby sentence, then you might need to change the wording and maybe add some language in order to make it a sentence. So if we read out loud the fragment here, also how to submit reports and request vendor payments, that's just confusing. We don't have a subject. We don't know who's doing it. This is not really a main verb. But when we realize that this sentence is just trying to explain like what it is that Jamie's telling us, now we can rewrite it by re-indicating Jamie using the pronoun she and then get another verb here, she also taught us how to submit reports and request vendor payments. So again, try to pull them into a nearby sentence or rewrite it if you have to. The last thing that I want to talk about is the fact that there are sometimes acceptable fragments. So, really good writers will occasionally, on purpose, use sentence fragments in order to create emphasis in their language. There's a variety of ways that you could do this. Sometimes it's appropriate to your audience and purpose, and sometimes it's not. So, what I'm going to say in terms of grading your papers and making judgment calls is this. I have been teaching long enough to know generally when you're doing it on purpose because you're trying to, quicken the pace or create some sort of dramatic effect. I also know when that dramatic effect is not working the way that you think it is. And I can also tell when you're just clueless on your grammar and you forgot a word. So, I might indicate to you that you have a fragment in your paper and ask you to fix it at some point. And then if you did it on purpose for a stylistic effect and you want to try to, convince me that this was really good, we can have that conversation. Or I might give you some advice on how to make that effect better using some other means. But basically, you're safer, especially in academic writing, if you use complete sentences. Though, as I said, I will occasionally allow them to be used on purpose when you're trying to create an effect. So, now that you've taken a look either in the Pocket Style Manual, the book itself, or in this electronic version, now I want you to do the adaptive quiz. So right here, you can go to the adaptive quiz in this way, or you can get to it on the screen here through Learning Curve, to do, and you would do it. I'm in the teacher side of it, so I'm on the assigning side of it. It looks just slightly different from your side. But make sure you do the Learning Curve quiz, and it's adaptive because the sooner you get questions right, the shorter the quiz is. If you start getting questions wrong, then it's going to keep throwing questions at you until you achieve a certain score. Make sure that you keep going until it tells you that you're done. Okay?